Welcome to White Widow Sports, your front row seat to all things sports. Whether it's the biggest plays, the hottest takes, or the stories behind the stats, we've got you covered. From the plays, athletes, fantasy football, or just regular sports, we're breaking it all down with passion, precision, and plenty of debate. So lace up, grab your gear, and let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here for week 4 of our weekly podcast. This is White Widow Sports. You probably already know that by now. We're hoping this isn't your first time watching us, but if it is, welcome. My name is Brad. Joining me tonight is Chris and Brian. Collectively, we have come together to start a podcast talking about sports. We do talk a lot of football, but we try to get into other sports as well. Tonight, we're going to actually start a little differently. We're going to jump into the world of pro wrestling. One of the biggest events of the year, and my personal favorite, the Royal Rumble, was last weekend. So, Chris, I know you watched that as well. What did you think about the event as a whole?
As a whole, there's only 4 matches, correct, including the 2 Rumbles. If there was one on the pre-show, I didn't really catch that. I was making some food and stuff. But out of those 4, yeah, I thought it was pretty good. The standalone matches, the ones outside the Rumble, I thought those were really solid. The Rumbles themselves, I've mixed thoughts on that. We'll get into that in a moment. But nothing I would say is the worst thing I've ever seen. Not the best thing I've ever seen. So pretty good though overall.
And Brian, I know you're not a huge wrestling fan anymore, but you used to watch it back in the day. Give me a year, the last time you watched a Royal Rumble or a WrestleMania, something like that.
Oh my goodness, boy, you are trying to date me.
No, I'm not. You're my brother. That's weird. Wrong state.
Not
True.
close.
Yeah, we need to be one state over for all that.
Sure.
Anyway, I don't know. Probably the 90s. I mean, I guess it was the Stone Cold Steve Austin, the D-Generation X, the WCW taking over WWE, or back then WWF. It was that time period, and I loved that period. That when is Stone Cold going to come out? When is Undertaker just going to pop out of nowhere? That was, to me, that was a lot of fun to watch. I kind of grew away from it a good bit. And that was the question I was going to ask you guys. Y'all being big wrestling fans, how would you talk to somebody that's never watched or did watch and doesn't like it anymore or whatever? How do you talk them into say, hey, let's watch this, or why don't we sit down and kind of hang out and watch this? What would be your advice to kind of get back into it?
Well, that's a pretty good question. And maybe I'm not the perfect one to answer because I've had a lot of off and on moments in my life as well. But it is this fun thing that's kind of under the umbrella of sports that you don't have to take it seriously. If my team in football, for example, loses, I'm going to be pretty upset. I'm going to be a little depressed and maybe a little bitter to be around. This is the kind of thing where you can just kind of have a little fun with it. And, especially if you're watching with people, I do think that's a bit underrated, and you should try to do that when you can. But yeah, it can be a lot of fun. You don't have to take it as seriously as other non-scripted sports.
Yeah, and to me, I think a lot of times it's trying to draw the lines between there's a difference between a non-fan and then a former fan. Some people have never watched wrestling, they've never gotten the appeal, and they're never going to, and that's okay. There are some people that said, I watched it back, at this time period, and this is what I liked about it. And then you try to connect those dots and say, well, this is what they're doing now that's very reminiscent of that. So obviously the big world in WWE, what's kind of happened over the last few years is that Triple H has taken over, and he runs the creative side of things for the WWE. And so he was somebody that was a big proponent. I mean, you dropped D-Generation X as a name that you knew from watching in your time period. I mean, that is Triple H and Shawn Michaels. And if you look at WWE's main roster, Triple H is running it. You look at their developmental show, Shawn Michaels is running it. And so they literally lived that era before, during, and after. And so those are the ones that are calling the shots and trying to bring it back. And so if I say John Cena's wrestling, you know who that is. If I say The Rock has come back, you know who that is. And a lot of times that's enough to get interested. Say, well, they're a little older, but I want to see if they've still got it. And then maybe you see somebody else that really impresses you enough to say, well, I mean, hey, that's a lot better than what I used to watch.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's something that you almost have to get somebody to just sit down and turn it on one time and then see if they can't, I mean, find that spark again, because there is a lot of good stuff. You do have to suspend disbelief and all, but there's a lot of attention to be grabbed with today's product.
Well, I think, I'm not going to call myself a former fan. Um, I'm still a fan of the athletes. I'm still, that is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of, a lot that goes into it. Um, I guess it's kind of like I almost compare it to NASCAR because I was a huge NASCAR fan about the same time. And then somewhere along the lines, and I really think it was kind of the years after Earnhardt, you know, Dale Earnhardt Sr. died, I it, they took the redneck out of it. And I guess I saw a lot with that with the wrestling too, is they took the wild moments, and really that's kind of, I'm not calling myself a redneck, or maybe I am a redneck, but to me that was fun. It was funny. There was some comedic s type stuff about it that kind of drew me in. And then when you took the fun out of it and you took the redneck out of it, why am I going to watch it? Why am I going to why am and now I've tried going back over the years and kind of, okay, is this what it used to be? Is it still? And it almost feels, um,
Neutered.
yeah, yeah, it really does. They took it, whatever it had, they took it away. I don't know what they actually had, what the formula was, but they took it away, and now it's just like, okay, let me go find something better on TV. And it may be, you know, back then we didn't have YouTube, we didn't really have TikTok, we didn't have the social media that it has today. So I can get on, short YouTube shorts or things like that, and I can, scroll through and I can find a highlight or something and like, okay, that's pretty cool, or that's, this. But and I don't have to sit down and watch an hour long or a 2 hour long thing, like Chris said a little bit ago. It was like, it had its good moments, but it had its bad ones too. So with the little shorts, I can, okay, what happened? You know, I'm not sure if it was this one, but I think a YouTuber got hit. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. He
No, it
jumped
was
in
Royal
the
Rumble.
Okay, he jumped in the ring and he got speared.
Oh, we'll
Uh,
get to that.
yeah, and I'm sure you will, but that's the things. Okay, I didn't watch the Rumble. I didn't, as a fan, I didn't watch it. So, but I did see that and that kind of made notes. And same thing with what's his name, Cody something, Cody Rhodes.
Mhm.
I think he got hurt pretty bad in that too. Um, or was that a different one?
His opponent got hurt, but I don't think he's seriously hurt. I think it was just part of the show.
Oh, I just saw it on shorts where Cody Rhodes, he's in a hospital with his neck brace, and you never know if that's actual. Is he hurt or just kind of hurt? But either
Well, I mean,
way, that's kind of.
it's funny that you bring up NASCAR because you're kind of like making a lot of the points that I was going to make. In that, one thing that I took from NASCAR is that names matter. If I said Petty, you know who I'm talking about, and it's not just one name that comes up. And Earnhardt is a big one because how many fans did Dale Earnhardt Jr. basically inherit because people liked his dad? He
Sure.
got to step into an audience that most people have to work to try to grab hold of. And so wrestling is very similar to that because you do have a lot of second and third generation superstars. If I tell you this is Cody Rhodes, you may not draw the line automatically, but I don't have
Oh,
to
I did.
say much to say like, oh, there used to be a wrestler I like named Dusty Rhodes. Like, yeah, well, this is his son.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so so much so that Dusty Rhodes was the American Dream, and they call Cody the American Nightmare. It is a direct play off of his dad's nickname. It's like, okay, well, people know the Orton family, people know The Rock and his lineage. Ric
Mhm.
Flair is one of the most notable pro wrestlers of all time. And now when you turn on Monday Night Raw and you see Charlotte Flair, you're like, oh wow, that's Ric Flair's daughter. And so
Yeah.
those names are familiar enough to say, man, I used to watch her dad wrestle when I was a kid. I went to see them wrestle in person, and now his daughter is out here winning championships and stuff like that. It's really cool that you can bridge generational gaps like that. And I think that that's another thing that you get from pro wrestling that you don't get in a lot of other sports.
Mhm.
And y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Nick Hogan, Hulk Hogan's son, tried to get into it as well. I don't know that he ever made a huge name for himself or got into it as much as his dad, but I think for a while he was trying to be the next up and comer or that second generation wrestler. So
I've heard of his daughter more than his son, so it's not
his
ringing a bell
son
for me.
his
Son
son
got
can't
into
stay
some
out of
trouble.
trouble. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in a wreck that I believe killed one of his friends. Very
Mm.
sad situation for both families. I mean, it wasn't just that was his friend. It wasn't he intentionally, was
Yeah.
trying to hurt the guy or whatever. But yeah, he's had a lot of legal issues. I want to say he's had a couple of DUIs,
Mm.
things of that nature. I know the daughter, Brooke. Last time I heard, she was still trying to make a music career. Not it's not my music, but to each their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I feel like wrestling's one of those things that there's something for everybody there. They do enough to try to spread stuff around that a lot of times you can catch it. And a lot of times, it's a social event. People will gather together to watch WrestleMania like they will the Super Bowl. And you don't
Mhm.
have to watch a football game all year and you'll still go to a Super Bowl party.
Right.
Well, you might not watch a single match or an episode of Raw, and people will still go and watch like a Royal Rumble or WrestleMania and they'll be captivated by it. I mean, it is an event. But like I said, Royal Rumble's always been my favorite. I've always liked it. And we had a decent one this past weekend. So we'll get into that a little bit. Um, but if you ever wonder why Brian isn't as talkative during the wrestling segments, how it seems to be me and Chris, Brian just kind of dated himself. He hasn't watched since the '90s, and as far as he's concerned, if you're not down with that, he's still got two words for you. Uh, but kind of going to back to this past weekend,
Mm.
Cody Rhodes, aforementioned, he defended his WWE Championship in a ladder match against Kevin Owens. Kind of what we were talking about, the short that even reached non-wrestling fan Brian. There was a nasty spot where Kevin Owens got slammed through a ladder, kind of landed on his neck and remained on his neck for an extended period of time. He also got bloodied up a pretty good bit. What did you think about that match, Chris? Expected outcome, or did you have hope for anything different?
That was the expected outcome, I think, by almost everyone. I thought that they could maybe throw a curveball in there and have Kevin Owens win, maybe Cody get it back here in a few weeks or something and carry on. They didn't choose to go with that, but what they did was they put on a fantastic match that was a lot more violent than anything I've seen WWE do in a long time. And I personally, it's not for everyone. I appreciate it. I saw lacerations, I saw cuts, I saw blood everywhere. Once again, not for everybody. I love it. I loved them getting slammed on the ladder, whether the ladder is gimmicked or not. I don't have the insider info, but yeah, that one last spot, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was an Alabama slam from the announce table through the ladder. I think his back was just supposed to hit on the ladder and it collapsed, but his head actually went through one of the spaces in between the ladder, and that's where his body weight came down on his head. I believe I saw him on Monday Night Raw. He seemed to be fine, but yeah, it did look like he could have had a concussion at the least, regardless of how safe they were trying to be in that one.
And
Yeah, I
that
mean, it
may
was a
be that may be the redneck that they're trying to put back in it. That's that missing because they did go away from the blood and the violence and the you know whether that's political or not. We're not a political channel, so yeah, who knows? But maybe they are trying to put that little something that was missing from back in my era, trying to recapture that.
Well, and I think too, I mean, there's been a stark difference where if I made you sit down and watch an episode of Raw from 10 years ago, right in the middle of what they called the PG era, where everything was very geared towards the kids, and then I let you watch any of the few episodes that they've had this year since they've shifted to Netflix, where you are firmly under the thumb of Triple H and his creative direction, and you're no longer restricted by what's on cable television, where you
Mhm.
don't have the language issues, you don't have uh, the FCC saying, "Hey, you can't do this on TV because it can be watched by this audience." You know, they don't have to hold back nearly as much, and they get to put out a product that they really want to put out. And I think you would see a night and day difference.
Sure.
And this latter match, kind of what Chris was saying, I think it is a testament to that. You saw stuff in this match that you don't typically see, and it was refreshing in a way.
Mhm.
Something that you um, expect from the Royal Rumble are surprises. So we'll start talking about the Royal Rumble matches themselves. We'll go to the women's match at first. Few surprises came in. Some were more welcome than others. Kind of the headline of that was Charlotte Flair, who we talked about not long ago, Ric Flair's daughter. She came in at pick 27 and won the match. Now she's got a decision to make as far as who she's going to challenge for the championship at WrestleMania. But before we get into that decision, what did you think about the women's Royal Rumble match?
I think it went pretty much as expected, which isn't really a bad thing, depending on who you ask. I think the biggest takeaways I have is that Liv Morgan is still building steam even without the belt. She did great, had a lot of great spots. So is Lyra Valkyria, who I think is being pushed to world champion in the future. I guess we'll see about that. I think Jordan Grace will be a full WWE member at some point. I think it's only a matter of time. She's been put on WWE television a lot and had pretty good receptions. I think we'll both agree that Alexa Bliss returning got the biggest pop for a women's wrestling moment in my recent memory. And then there was Nikki Bella, and at 30, she did not get the same pop she had. Granted, there were some cheers, but I don't think that she got the reception she was hoping for, or that WWE was hoping for either.
Well, I mean, just to speak to that, I mean, I think WWE does such a good job of building that excitement. People get certain names that they expected. We actually just talked about this before the Royal Rumble about names that we expected to show up, and some did and some did not. Uh,
Yeah.
so when you get to pick 30, it's almost like crossing off names from the list of people that are in the match. And now you've got three people that you're expecting to see and only one spot left.
Mhm.
And so the people that thought that that one person was going to come and they're a fan of that person, they're over the moon. But 2/3 of the audience are now almost taken aback by the person that they thought it was going to be no longer having that space that they thought they were going to get. I think WWE could have done Nikki Bella some favors if they had swapped her and Alexa Bliss. I
Yeah.
think Nikki Bella, if she had come in when Bliss did, she would
Mhm.
have gotten a pretty decent reaction. I don't think people dislike Nikki Bella, but two names that were rumored to be returning in that match potentially were AJ Lee and Becky Lynch. We ended up not seeing either of those, but when you're thinking, oh man, they could be number 30, and then you get Nikki Bella, I feel like she doesn't have the power to get that reaction that Alexa Bliss herself probably would have been able to garner. So I feel like they could have done themselves some favor by
Yeah.
swapping those two
Sure.
entrances. I see why they did the way that they did.
Mhm.
But star of the show that hasn't been mentioned yet was Roxanne Perez. She broke out an hour and 7 minutes plus, actually broke the record for longest time spent in a Royal Rumble, and she didn't even win it.
Mhm.
Nor was she one of the top two entrants. I think she came in at third, but was there till the very end. She was the last one eliminated by Charlotte Flair. So, very good Royal Rumble performance for her. I expect to see her on the main roster very soon.
Yeah.
Jordan Grace, I believe, is signed to a WWE
Oh,
contract.
my bad.
There might be a brief stint in NXT, but I don't think it'll be a very long one.
Mhm.
I think NXT is pretty well handled down there with the likes of Joy and Stephanie Vaquer and those.
Mhm.
So I expect to see Jordan Grace on the main roster soon. She's been on one heck of a run since her TNA career began, and obviously WWE had a lot of interest in her for a reason.
Mhm.
But going back to Charlotte, the winner, who do you see her challenging at WrestleMania? Is that something that you're kind of up in the air about, or do you think they're going to go one specific direction over the other?
I'm pretty up in the air. We did both predict Charlotte in our last video, and is she overpushed? Maybe, but they're concerned. She can certainly perform and is good on the biggest stages quite often. So, um, who's our options right now? Rhea Ripley
And Tiffany
or
Stratton
Tiffany Stratton? I think.
or Julia?
Well, I think she did that once, right? She won the Rumble and went to challenge the NXT champion.
That was Rhea Ripley.
Oh, my bad.
That was their first WrestleMania match
So
when
that
Rhea was NXT Women's Champion.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that has been done. I don't think they're going to do that again, and I mean drop down to NXT. I'm sorry if that offends someone that thinks NXT is on the same level, but if I don't think they're going to drop down to NXT and do that sort of thing. So I think it's a two-woman race, and I think the more intriguing one, even though they said it's happened twice already, is Rhea Ripley. Because they did set that up on Raw, talking about how I've beaten you once at WrestleMania. I've beaten you once at WrestleMania. So why not have the third? And then also Tiffany, I just don't see those two clashing as well. So I do expect it to be against Rhea Ripley. And it should be. I think that sounds like a good match, even though we've seen it before.
Yeah, I mean they've always done well, and I could see them going back a third time, that rubber match. The weird thing is I don't see Charlotte beating Rhea with the run that she's been on. I could see her take the title off of Tiffany. But what's interesting is they had Charlotte come out almost as a face to start the segment, and fans weren't really having it, and ended up getting booed and kind of had to pivot a little bit. And I think either route they take, whether it be Rhea or Tiffany or even Julia, Charlotte is not getting cheered against any of those other ladies. So I thought it was kind of weird that they had her come out and try to cut a face promo. I think Charlotte is a much better heel anyway. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. I think the men's Royal Rumble is a lot more cut and dry with who won it and who they're going to be challenging. But kind of in that match, before we get to the winner, who was your favorite surprise? What did you think about the men's Rumble match?
In the men's Rumble, well, there were no real surprises for me. And I don't think TNA's Joe Hendry counts because you aren't much of a surprise when there are signs for you, cutouts of your head in the crowd, and a whole section spelling out your name. So I don't think that was a huge surprise. Now, as this guy was brought up before, someone named I Show Speed was a surprise, I guess. Somebody got taken out.
It was Akira Tozawa got laid out during his entrance.
So they go to the back and they pull this guy. And I had to have the guys with me explain who this was, which they didn't do a great job of doing. And I actually thought it was just ISO Speed, which I thought was a football play mashup. And those of you that don't know, ISO is like a halfback dive. And then speed is usually a play like a sweep or outside run. I was like, who's ISO Speed? And they were like, no, apparently his name is I Show Speed, as if he is presenting to me how fast he is, like a former track athlete or something. And, I wasn't about it. Apparently he's got a big following on YouTube and we don't. So I guess fair play to you. But yeah, he is the one that went in and he got absolutely destroyed by a very upcoming star. But I didn't see any huge surprise guests. And I guess that surprised me in and of itself is that I didn't see a returning nostalgia act or a guy where I was like, oh my God, where's he been? And I can't believe he's here. That really didn't happen for me in the men's.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. His name is I Show Speed, and Braun Breaker said, I'll show you power because he got absolutely laid out. I think I saw where that one clip is actually the most viewed Royal Rumble video of all time, and it broke that record within like 12 hours.
And it reached Brian even.
Yeah.
It did.
Obviously, AJ Styles coming back was pretty cool. That was a name that I didn't think about. Sure. I think it shows a difference in ideology because there were a lot of returns The Alexa Bliss, the Charlotte Flairs, Becky Lynch, AJ Lee. There's a lot of mystery about who could be coming back in that match, more so than who was going to win it. I think there was a lot more intrigue about who the participants was going to be. And then when you look at the men's side, when you have the Roman Reigns, John Cena, Logan Paul, I think was announced as being the number 30 entrant. There was a lot of people that you could make a case for winning. We actually had a conversation about that over who we thought was going to win, and we had a difference in opinions on that. So I think it actually showed a difference in booking of, well, we've got a lot of talent here. We're not going to rely on a lot of past superstars. We're going to basically keep you guessing as to who we're going to crown as the winner. So, I mean, to get to that winner, just to kind of throw it out there, I know Chris has some thoughts on that, but Jey Uso, main event, WrestleMania main event, Jey Uso, as we might call him now, was the first person to enter in at number 20 and won the Royal Rumble. He last eliminated John Cena, who was my pick to win it. I think we all know where this is going, but what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, I'd like to be tame about this, but I'm not going to be. So, Jey Uso wins. It's going to be the main event of WrestleMania, night one, I presume. Now, in wrestling, calling yourself an animal doesn't make you Batista or George Steele, an actual creature. Calling yourself a game doesn't make Triple H a home console. Calling yourself a wizard doesn't make Chris Jericho a magic man. Calling yourself the best in the world doesn't make CM Punk or any of the hundreds of others that have said that the best in the world. So calling yourself main event Jey Uso does not make you a main eventer. He is always going to be a tag team wrestler in my mind. And someone could argue that guys come out of popular tag teams all the time, go on to bigger success. Shawn Michaels, Jeff Hardy, and Edge, I argue, might have more talent than Jey Uso. So my biggest problem is I don't even view him as much of a mid-carder. I know he's won the IC title for like a week. So to make this jump is wild to me. I'll throw off some names that I think could have been a more believable jump into this position. And let me pull those up real quick. And some of them are stretched, but like I still see them on a bigger stage than Jey Uso. Braun Breaker, Andrade, despite not being pushed so much yet, I think he has potential. Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura, who has won the Rumble before, so that's not too much of a stretch. Damian Priest or LA Knight, yeah. My prediction is that he's going to face Gunther. It would be a total waste of time for him to face Cody. I think there's much bigger drawing options for him. He could even face the NXT champion if he wanted to, take a page out of the women's playbook from a few years ago. But I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see if your main draw is to come out with your entrance and waft your arms up and down like you're on a roller coaster, hit a few super kicks, and then a basic splash off the top rope. We'll see what that looks like against an actual talented wrestler. So if you're watching Jey Uso, and I don't think you are, that's my thoughts.
Well, Brian, I mean, you obviously work in the real world. You are not a WWE superstar. You're the Monday morning quarterback. Doesn't get paid to play on Sundays. So, I mean, I guess just to kind of relate this back, I do have a point in this in asking, but are there certain expectations or boxes that you feel like you have to check as far as work performance goes that you would expect to be rewarded for? Does that make sense to you?
Yes and no. I mean, it makes sense in the working world as I relate it back to my job. But as far as anything that you guys have been talking about right now, I don't have a clue. I'll be honest with you. I don't
Well,
know 99% of the names. I do kind of understand the wrestling terms that's being used, off the top rope, things of that nature. That doesn't change. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't have an opinion one way or another about any wrestling because I just don't watch it. I mean, I get it, just like I'll have a segment here in a little bit about golf, and I'm sure I'm going to take it into a level like, Hopefully I don't, but you guys are not because y'all are not golfing fans. Y'all don't play it. You know, you'll probably understand a couple of the names that I talk about, but or maybe even the place that I'm talking about. But are at the end of the day, is it really going to mean anything to you? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring you into it because similarly to golf, it's not so much the names, but the concept. And that's kind of what I wanted to relay it back. You know, if you say, hey, I've been here for a long time, I think I'm due for a raise or a promotion. If you say, hey, I always show up to work on time, I do this and that, you have performance metrics that you hit that you expect to be rewarded for. Fair enough to say. You feel like you kind of can build a case for yourself. If I was going to defend the Jey Uso winning the Royal Rumble decision, I think I would say, okay, he's been in the company for what, 15 years. He was very successful as a tag team. I think a lot of people would agree that he is the better of the two between him and his brother. He has put the time in. He's obviously got the crowd support behind him. If you look at the sales generated from his merchandise, he holds like 8 of the top 10 spots at any point in time. He moves merchandise, and a lot of people say that was the same thing that propped up John Cena. Why was John Cena always champion? It wasn't because he was the best wrestler, but
Okay.
it was because people were invested in him. He was able to do more for the company as champion than anything else.
Where
But
all are valid points, and I think everybody saw Chris wave his hand at the whole merchandising thing. If
I have a comparison.
me not being a fan, okay, I still know the John Cena name.
Hmm.
I and it's not from the movie world. I know him from because honestly, his movies are not that great, but we
No.
won't go down that road. Um, but I know him because he does pop up on my feed, just like that YouTuber that got speared. You know,
Hmm.
John Cena put his name. This other guy that you just mentioned, I don't have a clue who he is. I don't care how long you've been in the wrestling business 15 years, 20 years, 45 years. If I don't know your name, you're nobody.
And
Well, I'll
just to
let Chris go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, just to intercept a point here, and not to discredit him because it's great to sell merch and means a lot. But one of the top merch sellers in AEW, which if you guys don't know is another, well, Brad knows, but if the listeners may not know, AEW is another wrestling company that's tapered off a little bit, has had a little bit of steam, but has a lot of former WWE guys and some upcoming stars. Anyway, all that to say that there's a guy named Danhausen who's basically a possessed clown. He leads the merchandising sales in AEW, or he's at least top three. Still, he has not been on TV in like 2 years. Uh, I don't think that's the greatest point to make. But Brad, I know that you just propped Jey Uso up with all those good things, but I feel like there's a but coming. Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, like I said, I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate.
Okay.
And so, like I said, for Jey Uso, the one thing that I kind of welcome about that decision is John Cena was the betting favorite to win the Royal Rumble. By Jey Uso last eliminating him, it gives a little bit of intrigue because people probably saw John Cena get to that final two and they felt like they knew what they were doing.
Sure.
Now, Brian knows who John Cena is now. He didn't know who John Cena was when Ruthless Aggression was happening. He couldn't tell me who John Cena's first opponent was. He couldn't tell me when John Cena won his first world championship. He knows John Cena, but he doesn't know the career, the arc, the trajectory of that. And WWE has had to make John Cena the star that he is now. My argument, I guess, would be Jey Uso has to be made a star. He's doing a lot of things that's right. And I think what's welcome is that John Cena didn't win the Royal Rumble means WWE is willing to invest in trying to build a new star rather than giving accolades to people that are already established that don't necessarily need it for the premise of being able to tell a better story. I like the change of not having a main eventer win King of the Ring every year, Money in the Bank every year, Royal Rumble every year, because those guys can get those matches and be at the top of the card based off their own merits. It almost means more to build another star by giving them those accolades. And I think that's what they were going for with the Jey Uso win. Do I think that they needed Jey Uso to win it to give him the match at WrestleMania? No, the fans are behind him. They needed somebody to face, each of their champions. They're going to get there. I'm not saying I even agree with the decision. I just say I understand it. So not a huge but there. I mean, I'm not saying that I like the decision. I think it's very anticlimactic. Obviously, I had picked John Cena to win. I had laid out why I thought that he would. Now it shows a change in booking for what I think we're going to see out of John Cena this year. That being said, I jumped the gun a little bit. I'm going to pick John Cena to win Elimination Chamber. I do still see him main eventing WrestleMania against Cody Rhodes. I think that we're going to see a different story from John Cena of he's not just going to go in, win the Royal Rumble, win the title at WrestleMania. There it is. And then you've got to figure out what to do with him the rest of the year.
Well, to be fair, I pointed out some of the wrestlers that I was a fan of back in the day, and I couldn't tell you who their first match was. I couldn't tell you. I do know Stone Cold was not always Stone Cold. I think he was Stunning Steve Austin or something like that, and was a part of some tag team that didn't really go all that far. But when he turned to, when his character changed and turned into Stone Cold, obviously everybody liked him. So I get that point, but like I said, even to be fair with me, I have my wrestlers from back in the day when I watched them that I liked. I couldn't tell you how they started, how they got their up and comings. I don't, I am not that guy, and I never will be. Even if you go relate it back to football, I can't tell you where every player went to college. I can't tell you what his high school stats were. I can't tell you, who his brother's mama's sister's husband was. I don't. I'm not gonna know that. I'm not gonna. I'm a fan. I don't. I'm not gonna. If I and I'm a fan of golf. I'm a fan of football. I like hockey. I like baseball, but that don't mean I'm doing a deep dive. I know Chris has a channel that's gonna do some deep dive stuff. If you watch the video that just released earlier this week with the NFL up and coming NFL stars, that was a great video. That's not me. I mean, I like the video. It's great video, guys, but I'm not the one to come to for that kind of information.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things where, like you said, Stone Cold isn't known for what he was when he had long blonde hair. He's known for what he became as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Rocky Maivia was almost bounced from the industry. I mean, he was falling flat, and it wasn't until he became The Rock and had the persona that you know now, which he's developed and built into a hugely successful career. I mean, everybody knows The Rock persona. It's bigger than the industry itself. So, I mean, Jey Uso, yes, he started off as a tag team wrestler. 10 years from now, are we going to talk about him in a different light than what we are now? Maybe. That's all I was really saying.
No. The guy's already 39 years old or something like that. And not to age shame, because I'm not far from that age myself. But no, I think those were different moments. And
I passed that moon a couple of times.
If you want to come back in 10 years or something and tell me I was wrong, fine, whatever. But I don't see it happening. And I'm not happy about it. But, I'm also not going to be the guy that says, I'm not watching this. It's stupid. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to enjoy myself. It's all predetermined. It's all a part of entertainment. And you know what? I'm sure it'll be halfway entertaining, regardless of what I think should or should not have happened.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we'll get a good match out of it. 10 years from now, I'll be wearing my Cam Scattaboo jersey. If you know, you know. Yeah, and I will be glad to tell you that I was right. Because, like I said, I mean, I feel like this isn't a win for the fans like me and you. I think that Jey Uso for the kids today is what Jeff Hardy was for the kids, 15 years ago. A lot of people remember his WWE Championship win the same way that people would remember Jey Uso if he won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania or World Heavyweight Championship. And so I feel like it's not for us, but we can still appreciate it and enjoy it along the way. That being said, I think that wraps up kind of what we had to talk about wrestling. We'll have some more when we get closer to Elimination Chamber.
Hey guys, if
and
you
currently WrestleMania.
one more thing, guys, they're not paying me to say this, but guys, if you like this belt, it's from a company called Fandu. They make great championship belts, and you can find those online. Just Fandu belts. So yeah, that's all we have
Not a
for us.
sponsor.
Not a
Yeah.
sponsor. Love them
Yet.
to be. They do a great job. Great work. But yeah, that's I think that's all we do have for wrestling. So make
All
a
right.
cut right
If
here. Like and
y'all want to switch gears and talk about a little bit of basketball.
yes.
Yeah, we had a pretty big week in the world of basketball. I think we mentioned this when we were talking about the Jimmy Butler discussion last week, but February 6th was the NBA trade deadline. And I don't think anybody really guessed as active of a trading world as what we were going to see. I think one player, Dennis Schroeder, former Atlanta Hawk, I want to say he got traded 4 different times this week, which was actually pretty funny because he had just before all of this happened, he had attributed the trade deadline to modern slavery because you show up to play a sport, but you have no say in where you are and what you're doing. These guys really hold your career in the palm of your hands. And I said to somebody, if I was Dennis Schroeder, I would not buy a house anywhere until February 7th.
Right.
Let that trade deadline pass before you even pull up Zillow. So, Brian, I feel like we're kind of beating on you a little bit because we go from wrestling, which you're not a fan of, to basketball, which you're not a fan of. But the same way that wrestling still got to you, even being outside of the fanship of it, what trades got to you this week? And was there anything that you heard about that you were like, wow, that was kind of unexpected?
I mean, other than the big AD trade that warranted its own video, uh, nothing really stood out to me. I mean, I see a lot of trades, and I pulled it up just so I could see what was going on. I see a ton of trades, and you know. I think we talked about it a little bit before the podcast. One team had 16 trades or something crazy like that, but nothing. Obviously, I don't know the names like I know football names. If you told me Saquon Barkley got traded, my jaw would hit the floor.
Mhm.
But most of these, again, I wish them luck. I hope they find a home. And guess what? The 7th is today, so it's time to pop up Zillow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we won't talk too much about the Luka Doncic trade. We did kind of
Yeah.
create our own video specifically for that when it happened. So kind of bypassing that a little bit. I think our next big deal would be the Jimmy Butler situation. That kind of warranted a segment on its own in video. He finds a new home going to Golden State, teaming up with Draymond Green and Steph Curry. Chris, were you surprised by that destination? What do you think about that trade?
1 second here. I had that way down on my list. I was going in date order, not order of importance. Obviously, in order of importance, that one is relevant. So that one's obviously the biggest one. If I'm not mistaken, that involved 5 teams. And so there's a lot going on there. But I think the main point is that the Warriors added Jimmy Butler, of course, and he has declined his 25-26 player option and has signed a 2-year, $121 million extension that will keep him with the Warriors through 26-27. My biggest thought on this is that I hope he was worth it. The Warriors are down there a little under 500 where a team like the Kings are, and I think this will help them climb up closer to 5th or 6th place in the West by the end of the season. They're giving up a former Rookie of the Year, former All-Star, former first overall pick, Andrew Wiggins, who is still under 30 years old. They're also giving up a protected first-round pick, along with several other decent players in their own right. So, yeah, I just hope it's worth it for you, Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest winner of this trade was Jimmy Butler, perhaps. He really wanted out of Miami, and I think Miami, by the end of it, really wanted him gone too. They knew that wasn't a relationship that they were going to be able to salvage. So, getting him a fresh scenery and a place to play, I think that's really what it was. I mean, you saw him storm out of practice because he got benched. He feels like he's one of the best players in the league. He still wants to show that, and to be sitting on the bench, I mean, it's very disheartening for somebody like that who thinks they can be one of the great stars of the game. So to not only get a new place where he's going to be able to play, he's going to get minutes for Golden State. He's going to be teaming with Steph Curry, another one of the greats, and have a chance to actually be competitive. He probably can't be happier about this. I know it wasn't his preferred destination, but I think it worked out really well in his favor. Like you said, I hope it's worth it. Gold State certainly didn't get him at a very cheap cost, in my opinion. But there were a lot of other transactions that happened where you looked at some of the compensation for them, and it was kind of puzzling. So, what would be your next big trade that you want to talk about as far as what surprised you, what baffled you?
Well, I don't want to read down this whole list, but we had a trade closer to the Luca trade because I kind of looked at all the trades in order that they occurred leading up to the deadline. One that I did notice was De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin of the Spurs are going, or no, will be going to the Spurs from the Kings, and the Kings will receive. I'm not even going to say his name, but a player, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks.
Yeah, I show Zach LaVine 3 first and 3 seconds.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to get into is Zach LaVine. I personally love anyone who has a good showing in the dunk contest. That's a thing I really enjoy. Some of it's stupid nowadays, but I think it still shows your raw athleticism. Zach LaVine has won the dunk contest twice. He's also a 2-time All-Star. I actually often trade for him on my NBA 2K games when I get into those, and I have him as a solid number 2. So I like this in real life as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big football guy. The draft is kind of my area of expertise if I was going to pin my cap onto one. But the compensation for this trade seems wild. I mean, Zach LaVine, like you said, he's won the dunk contest. He's been an all-star, stuff like that. To not only get him 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks, I mean, that was more what I would expect to have to give up for somebody like Luka Doncic. And so to see the compensation that the Kings got for the Spurs was just insane to me. And yet, from all accounts, the Spurs have been graded very favorably on this deal, bringing in Fox, pairing him with Wemby and stuff like that. I mean, it really heightens their contention window right now. And it seems like it was just a great move for them, almost like getting this player at all cost is going to be worth it in the end.
The Kings also went out and got Giannis Valanciunas. I think I got that name right on the money. They added the big man to the roster. He's a solid guy moving into his 5th NBA team. And the Kings only had one center on the roster remaining. They got him out of the Wizards. Looks like Sissoko, I believe, was also involved, and 2 future second-round picks. The Kings are down there around 500 with the Warriors. And I think that getting Valanciunas and LaVine is going to get them – this is going to get them back up there. I'm not going to say 5 or 6, but I am going to predict that they go from around 500, whatever they're ranked about 10th in the West. I think this is going to get them up there out of the the play-in. The play-in, I think this is going to get them a solid playoff spot where they don't have to end up playing in the play-in bracket. And I think that while what they did is not a blockbuster trade, I think that adding those 2 pieces seems really good to me. Another thing, and maybe you want to set this up and maybe get your thoughts. I don't know what you had in your notes to go on next, is the Clippers are going to get Bogdan Bogdanovic. I think I nailed that one too. I'm on a roll, guys. And the Hawks got Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, 2025 second-round pick, 2026 second-round pick, 2027 second-round pick. Brad, I know you know about this one, us being in Georgia and all, and being Hawks fans and stuff. What'd you make of that one?
Well, I mean, the I kind of put these two together, kind of put them together as far as them being Hawks transactions.
Yeah.
So the first deal that we saw come through was DeAndre Hunter goes to the Cavaliers. Got a couple players and 3 second round picks, as well as the rights to 2 first round pick swaps, which could be very big.
Mhm.
And then you turn around and you say, well, Hunter's he's been in a slump for the last month, but he's kind of had everything click for him this year. He's
Yes.
possibly, the what do they call it? The best bench player in the league, 6th man of the year,
Mhm.
something like that. I mean, he was kind of in contention for that award. It just seemed like he is finally playing really good basketball this year and put everything together. So it's kind of surprising to see him being dumped basically for his salary. But the Bogdan trade was something that a lot of people saw coming anyway.
Mhm.
To me, I think it's a welcome move. I don't like him because of his name. It's very Philip Phillips to me. Bogdan Bogdanovic. It's just a stupid name. Get him out of here. The only thing I really took from that trade, 2 things. I don't know anything about Terrence Mann other than at one point in time he was labeled untouchable. And I think that was within just like the last 18 months. And now apparently he's not because he's a member of the Hawks. But to get rid of the dumbest name in the NBA and replace him with Bones Highland, welcome change. Bones, welcome to Atlanta. I appreciate you being here. And to have, I know seconds are kind of devalued in the NBA world as opposed to the NFL world, but to net 6 second round picks in those 2 trades, it's going to do a lot for the Hawks' ability to not only roster construct and team build. I think it also gives them a lot of flexibility when they do decide to make other deals. They've got a lot of assets in the cupboard now that they can send out for other deals as they need to, maybe this offseason.
Yeah, so there's 2 pieces there as you set up. Bogey there, he was a nice spark in Atlanta, but he wasn't really changing the fortunes of the Hawks. So getting what you can out of him might have been the best option. It was always been rumored. I would have loved to see a distant first round pick instead of 3 seconds, maybe a couple of guys that I'm not too familiar with. But I guess I can understand if he wasn't fully worth that. As far as DeAndre Hunter, he was, as you touched on, he's actually having a career season with 19 points per game. He's actually now headed to the hottest team in the East. I think that's an understatement. A point that we might have overlooked there is not only is he heading out of Atlanta while he's hot, he's going to the hottest team, arguably in the NBA. But yeah, you got a lot of picks out of this. You got a lot of draft capital. I think that you're going to see the Hawks. It's not going to be great. Uh, Something else I have here. The Hawks actually don't own their pick in the first round next year because I believe, yeah, as you said,
The Spurs.
that trade came with some pick swaps. But what we got coming up here is even if we fall too far, we don't even own that pick, or the Hawks don't even own that pick. So I say we, being a Hawks fan in a Hawks jersey. So we do have the pick. We do have 2 first round picks in the Lakers. That's an unprotected pick. And then we have the Kings first round pick next season, which is a 1 through 12 protected. So here's to hoping they pick 13th. So as a Hawks fan, I'm more excited for late June than I am for the rest of the season. In that regards, we have a few more trades that we can touch on here.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a couple more on mine. I
Yeah,
don't
go
know if
ahead.
there's any other notables that you had. Brandon Ingram was one that we had mentioned last
Mhm.
week in one of our videos. He ends up being sent to the Raptors. They get a couple players back, a first and a second. So not a, huge trade in the landscape, but I think something that a lot of people saw coming. It was just a matter of where he was going, that destination. It was not a matter of if, but where, you could say. And the Lakers made another move. Obviously, there was talk a while back. Anthony
Yeah.
Davis had said that he thought that they needed another big, somebody that can come in and play center, allow him to move to that power forward spot. And the Lakers did make another move to get another big guy. It's just that
Mhm.
AD won't be around to play with him.
Yeah.
So Mark Williams comes over from the Hornets.
Right.
They sent over their first rounder from last year. I think he was taken third or fourth overall, so I was kind of surprised to see him go. Cam Reddish and a 2031 first round pick also being
Unprotected.
sent to get Mark Williams.
That pick's unprotected also. So if for some reason they ended up with the first pick in the draft, Lakers can't protect it.
Yep.
If you didn't have anything else to say on that, I did. Yeah. So the Lakers did go out and get their big guy. He was the former 15th overall pick, and he's 7 feet tall, and you can't teach that. He's also only 23 years old, ACC Defensive Player of the Year in 2022 with Duke. What this trade tells me is that they're really buying into this guy. To send an unprotected first-round pick is something you don't do unless you're pretty certain about the potential of someone in the future, and it seems like they are. So, like the Warriors, I hope it was worth it. Good luck to you on that one. Let's see if I had any more trades that were notable. I think the Bucks getting Kyle Kuzma in there from the Wizards. I believe that was a 3-way trade. Got a slightly younger guard, got rid of Chris Middleton. So slightly younger there, get some depth. And the Bucks are obviously one of the best teams in the last 5 years in the East. So I think that's good depth to add there. I noted a few more trades. None were too exciting. Don't know if you had any left on that point, but I'm good.
No, the only other thing I would say is just to kind of throw a curveball, like an unexpected question to you.
Sure.
Obviously we talked about the Cavaliers adding to what's already been a great year for them.
Mhm.
But what team do you think did the most at the trade deadline to improve their chances at winning a championship? Is that the Cavaliers, or does another team come to mind?
A championship this season.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that your favorites before the trade deadline are still your favorites. So I don't think a team actually went out and made a move. And this goes back to Brian being not as big of a fan. He said, I don't see anything that blows my head off. So I have to sort of agree with that. While there are some big moves, I don't see one that's going to change the entire landscape. As I already mentioned, I do think the Kings are going to take themselves out of 500 land, move up into a better spot, and so are the Warriors. But I don't think either of them, while both of them did great, and I think the Lakers invested in their future, I don't see anyone benefiting from the trade deadline and just putting themselves into title contention immediately. And I think your favorites before the deadline are still your favorites.
Yeah,
I
makes
had a
sense.
I had a similar question that I was going to ask both of you. Um, who who was the biggest winner and who was the biggest loser of this trade deadline? And you don't have to get like super specific. It's just I guess who was your top 2 teams that did the best? Who's the bottom 2 teams?
Well, I mean, I think just to go back to the Lakers and really to give the other flip side to what Chris and I were just talking about, if you talk about who did the most for this year, you're going to get a different answer. But if you look at just who did the most for the franchise itself, I might argue that it was the Lakers. I mentioned this in the Luka video. Luka is 25 years old. He's a 5-time All-Star, and that's not the type of player that you see dealt very often. And so even if the Lakers don't get anywhere in the postseason this year, they've already got to be looking at life after LeBron. LeBron has been great. He just had a 40-point game at 40 years old. One of only 2 players to do that, Michael Jordan being the other. I mean, you see him continuously doing great things even at his age, and the longevity of his career is unmatched. But father time comes for everybody, and it'll come for LeBron the same way, believe it or not.
Sure.
Not that he's showing any signs of it now, but the Lakers have to be excited to already have their next star already on roster. They don't have to make a move; they've already made it. So I would say the Lakers did the most for their franchise. I would definitely call them a winner. And they just to kind of summarize, they traded away an often injured 32-year-old Anthony Davis for a 25-year-old megastar in Luka Doncic. So that's got to be a win,
Yep.
maybe in the short term, but certainly in the long term.
I agree.
Yeah, I have nothing really to add to that. That it
Were
nice
there
that
any were there any big losers? I mean, I know we talked about not just winners for this year, but winners for, you know, forecasting. But were there anybody that really, really just, man, what were y'all thinking?
a lot of people are saying that my Hawks would be those losers. And I could see where they're coming from, but I also can't make that prediction until I see what comes of it. History will say they mess up the draft a lot. History will say they don't sign the big free agents, and so you traded away what you had for some opportunities that you're going to turn into nothing. And I can't even argue with that. So if you force me to name a team, it might be the Hawks.
Yeah, I think Atlanta has a lot of Georgia sports fans have almost been programmed to expect the worst. We're a pessimistic group.
Sure.
And so it's kind of like, hey, this player is really good. And a draft pick is like a lottery ticket, it's a scratch off.
Mhm.
And so, it's kind of that joke that's come around, it's gotten real big over the last year. It's like, okay, you could have a boat or you can have what's behind door number 2. It could be anything, it could even be a boat. And so it's like the Hawks knew what they had in DeAndre Hunter and Bogey as well.
Mhm.
And they said, no, this ain't really working for me. Give me 6 second-round draft picks, and I'll see if maybe any of those could be any better, but probably won't be. So are we pessimistic? Maybe. Do we have reason to be? Yeah.
So yeah, Trey Young sitting there all alone. And I at least give him credit to keeping that, because a lot of very negative fans, the kind that'll just laugh at your suffering, are like, get him out of there, trade him somewhere where he can do something. I think he can do something there. I think he's going to have to be patient, and 99% of guys aren't being patient. So, yeah, there's a lot of reason to be negative about what you still have. And I think that's the worst part of it.
All right.
He's like the broke man's freezer. It's there's an ice tray and nothing else.
That's all there is, man. I think that's all we really had for the NBA.
So we needed to take a short break. Obviously, that'll be clipped out of the video, so you won't have to watch that. But we do want to jump right back into the action and move on to the NFL. Obviously, with it being Super Bowl weekend, it's a huge weekend for football fans such as myself and the rest of the guys. But first, I think we wanted to kind of talk about the NFL going to Australia for the first time. Do either one of y'all have an opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I think it just kind of shows the NFL. They really want to become a global brand. They don't want to be viewed as just an American sport, playing American football, being an American league. They've had games in Germany, they've had games in London, they've had games in Mexico, and this is just that next step. Basically, they're saying to the world, if you've got an arena and you've got fans to fill it, we'll come and make it work. So that being said, Australia's getting a couple of NFL games. The first one's going to be in 2026. The Los Angeles Rams have already been announced as the home team for that game. It'll be in Melbourne. They have not announced who that opponent is, but the way the NFL schedules work, you know almost all of the opponents year by year because they're on a rotation. So there are a couple of opponents for the Rams that year that won't be decided until closer to that time. But some of the possible opponents will be the Seahawks, 49ers, and Cardinals. Obviously, they're division rivals. They're going to play every year. But it could also be the Cowboys, Giants, Chiefs, or Chargers. And like I said, there will be 2 other options. But, I mean, I'm excited for it. I mean, I think it's kind of one of those spectacle games. Depending on when they play it is always interesting because, you get in those time zone differences and stuff like that. That's always going to be the big thing. It was always weird that first London game where I'm at church on a Sunday morning and I get a fantasy alert that one of my players was in the red zone. I'm like, what kind of bug is this? And I realized they played in London. I was like, dang, I didn't even set my lineup yet. So that can always mess with you. But Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of the points that I was thinking there. And but one thing you didn't is the Rams hosting. Um, LA doesn't seem to care that much about the Rams the way maybe Buffalo cares about the Bills, Minnesota cares about the Vikings. So there's actually a lot of examples about that. LA just doesn't feel like one. Same goes for the Chargers. So essentially, losing a home game for them, I don't think will matter all that much. And that's pretty much the only thoughts I had to add to what you already said. So
That being
I think it's a good thing. Just real quick, you see the games that are played over in London and Germany, and the fan turnout is just spectacular. I would almost rival it to some of those games are bigger than what a home game would be here for, say, the
yeah,
Falcons or the Jaguars, or maybe some of the teams that didn't have such a great year like the Eagles. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's fun to see how other countries react to a sport that we all either grew up watching, or I think the three of us grew up playing. So obviously we didn't make it into the NFL, but we
right.
still have love for the game. So I think it's a great thing. I like to see it. Um, you know, I look forward to it. I don't necessarily want to get up at 3 in the morning to try to watch something like that, but hey, I might if my fantasy player's playing in it and I need points. So you never know.
And we all know that the trick to getting fantasy points is to watch the games that have your players in it.
Yeah,
If you don't
Yeah,
watch them, they're not going to score you any points. You got to be
it's your fault.
invested.
It's
yeah.
your
You
fault.
got
They
to
Yeah.
you got to
they
be
know
able
if
to
you're
yell at
watching
them.
or not. Yeah.
They
You
know,
you
like Santa Claus.
you have to be able to yell at them and coach them up while they're in the middle of their game,
Exactly,
so that they'll score you some points.
for sure.
So
Well, and obviously, we're going to get to the Super Bowl, but there's also one other event that always happens, and that was the NFL honors, usually done the same week as the Super Bowl. So we got some wins that we want to talk about. So we'll kind of go through these, and if y'all don't have much to say about them, we can always move on to the next. But I do have the list here.
Sure.
So starting with the Walter Payton Man of the Year, that went to Jaguars defense, Eric Armstead. Just from what little I know about him, he's always been involved in the community. He does a lot for the kids. I don't think anybody does. I don't think there's anybody that's up for the award that doesn't deserve it. I don't know how they pick who wins it, who's more deserving over anybody else. But props to all 32 candidates for even being up for it. It just shows that they're doing something with their platform, doing something meaningful with their money and their time. So don't really have much to say about that, but I appreciate that it's a thing.
sure.
A little bit more, I guess, interesting for most fans. Coach of the year goes to Kevin O'Connell. He is the head coach of the Vikings. He received 25 votes. Next place was Dan Campbell, who I actually expected to win uh, head coach of the Detroit Lions. He got 19. But the Vikings, they came into it with a plan. They had drafted J.J. McCarthy. He gets hurt at the very beginning of the year, ends up missing the entire year with a meniscus injury. And Sam Darnold kind of has his career resurrected. Vikings get 14 wins on the season. I think Kevin O'Connell's done a great job there. It was already going to be a new look team with Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. And so having a brand new quarterback that, didn't necessarily win that competition, but has really shown what he's capable of doing in the right system. Can't give Kevin O'Connell enough credit there.
Yeah, and only 39 years old. He's a first-time head coach. He's got a very bright future ahead of him. And at
Sure.
39 years old, that's a great time to start a head coaching career. It's not a great time to start a WrestleMania main event career, but I digress.
So Jey Uso aside, future Hall of Famer Jey Uso. We'll talk about some other future Hall of Famers. Eric Allen, Jared Allen, Sterling Sharp, and Antonio Gates have all been announced as the 2025 class of the NFL Hall of Fame. Obviously, some meaningful names there. There's also some names that I thought, kind of expected to be named that were snubbed. They didn't get the required number of votes. Eli Manning, Terrell Suggs, Luke Kuechly, Adam Vinatieri, and Marshall Yanda, all of which are not going to the Hall of Fame. What kind of stands out to you guys about those names? Brian, you got any thoughts?
I really the Eli Manning, because I believe Peyton's already there, isn't he?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
I believe
with
so.
Eli not getting it, that kind of I'm very surprised at that. Now, will he go down next year? More than likely. Um, but I was super surprised that he didn't go this year. Um, but other than that, not really. No big surprises there.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I guess
Jared Allen is a name I haven't thought about in a long time. Antonio Gates is one of the greatest tight ends of all time. I really like that
Sure.
he's in there. And then Sterling Sharp, to me, is only interesting because his brother's already in it. And I
Yep.
think I saw where this is the first brother duo to be elected into the Hall of Fame.
And that's why I was surprised that the Eli is with Peyton already being there. I figure especially they already have a YouTube channel. They have they do the
right.
talk through on the games where they're doing the commentary. They're kind of the poster boys for the NFL, so to speak. I'm really really surprised that they didn't make them the first brother duo to go in, but um, I'm not disappointed with the people who are going in because that is the people that I watched growing up. So, you know, good on them. I'm super happy for them going into the Hall of Fame, and much due respect to the candidates there. So,
I think a
um,
lot of these guys will get their moment.
sure.
Just because it's not this year doesn't mean it's not next year or the year after. So I wouldn't be worried about if you're a big fan of those guys.
And speaking of the Peyton brothers, and I know we didn't have this in our notes or anything. Did y'all see the highlights of Peyton Manning's son throwing the football at the Pro Bowl?
I
If
didn't.
you can call it the Pro Bowl, I'll digress on that for sure. Um, that kid he's talented.
Hmm.
I mean, to be as young as he is, I mean, he doesn't look more than probably 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that age range. I don't know exactly, but he's got a great throwing motion. You can tell his daddy is Peyton Manning for sure. Um, so I think that's something that we'll probably be talking about in a few years, as much as everybody talks about Arch Manning um, down in Texas. I think you're gonna see that come along as well.
Are you
Or
saying there's some correlation between the last name Manning and being able to throw a football?
there might be a little bit.
could be.
Might
And
might
you might
be.
not have to wait a few years. We might make a video talking about him and his highlights coming up soon here on White Widow Sports. Don't rule it out.
Yeah.
Maybe
Follow his
rule it
high
out,
school.
but don't rule it out.
Moving on to the next one, you've got Defensive Rookie of the Year went to Jared Verse. He's an outside linebacker for the Los Angeles Rams. He was the 19th overall pick out of Florida State. That's a pretty close to me. I mean, it's the biggest FBS school in my vicinity. So I watch a lot of Florida State games just because they're convenient. They're easy to assess for me down here. Verse was a great player. He was actually somebody that I had scouted in thinking that he could be a Falcon at some point. Obviously, we went a different direction, but he's had a great year. I don't have much really else to say other than the Rams really needed a defensive playmaker post Aaron Donald, and it seems like they found it in Verse.
Yeah, I got here in my notes 6.5 sacks if you include the playoffs. That's just fantastic and game changing for a rookie. So, what a
Yeah,
blessing to have him on the team.
there's a lot of defensive players that don't get 6.5 sacks for the entirety of their career. This guy
Right.
got it as a rookie. Probably a good number more to come from what we've seen.
Yeah.
And it's also funny. Brian mentioned the Pro Bowl. I don't know if I made a funny face or not when he said that. We're all football guys. It caught me by surprise when you said that because I don't know anything about the Pro Bowl this year. I didn't watch it. I didn't watch any of the games. I didn't watch any of the skills challenge. I don't have anything about the Pro Bowl in my notes. I completely forgot that it was even a thing. So that kind of tells you how far it's fallen.
You know what? I'll bring
That-
up that we didn't have this planned, but as far as the Pro Bowl topic, people are saying, well, you should play a game, and I think we should all agree that they really shouldn't, because it just takes one tackle to mess up your whole career. And I really think, and this is just me, if you guys disagree or not, you can let me know. I really think that for the Pro Bowl, you should just be named a Pro Bowler, kind of like in college, you're named an All American, but you shouldn't go out there risking your body and your future and millions of dollars. So, is it kind of stupid to have Pro Bowl games? Maybe it is, but you get to see people like Peyton Manning's son and future stars of that nature. So, silver lining.
But
I don't
that's
think
the
you
thing.
yeah.
That's the thing, and I don't mean to cut you off, but it's not a game anymore.
Hmm.
It's some skill based challenges. It's a flag football, and I'm not even going to call that a game because it was just it wasn't worth watching. It really wasn't. To me, as a fan, it was a waste of time.
So
So
you agree? Just name them a Pro Bowler and leave it at that. Don't have anything else.
yeah, I mean,
Put it on your
I
resume and leave it.
I don't know if you wanna do some of the skill base, I would leave some of the antics off. The flag football, leave that off.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. Um, but seeing how far a quarterback can chunk the ball, that's kind of funny. Seeing them hit the target, it's kind of no different than the NBA having their dunks, the slam dunk contest.
Totally.
I for those things, okay, yeah, let's see that part of it. But again, that can be made into a YouTube short, and I'll see it as much as putting it on mainstream TV and stuff like that. I don't know. I get why it's there, but I don't enjoy watching it for the most part, other than it is to see, like Peyton Manning's son, like Brad mentioned, seeing that up and coming talent, that was kind of, and even that was, it was a highlight. It wasn't even they didn't mean for that to go on TV. It wasn't a planned event. It's just he was out there throwing to some NFL wide receivers, and some cameraman said, "Hey, that's pretty cool. Let me get this on film." So props to that cameraman, more so than the NFL players going out there goofing off.
I
Yeah, I
mentioned
mean,
earlier, I mentioned earlier that I like the dunk contest, and he bashes the dunk contest. I feel personally attacked. Go ahead, Brett.
well, I mean, what I was saying is, I think it's one of those where you almost treat it like a reward. Yes, they get the career accolade, but those people, they treat it like a vacation.
Mhm.
Worked really hard. They had good seasons. They get named as a Pro Bowler, and they call it the Pro Bowl games now versus the Pro Bowl
Mhm.
game, because
Right.
there's a lot less focus on the game itself, AFC versus NFC. They've tried to reinvent that wheel a few times to not much effect. These players, they throw down all year. They put their bodies on the line. They run themselves ragged for their team, and then you expect them to pack up and go to Hawaii for a week, learn a whole new thing, and then go out there for what? To risk injury again? They're not going to take it seriously, and I don't think fans should either. So now they almost treat it like the Olympic Games, where they give them different skills challenges, something lighthearted and fun. It's a reward for those players for all their hard work and the success that they had. I just don't think anybody should be surprised when they see the poor ratings numbers. Because, like I
Mhm.
said, I didn't know anything that happened this past week until Brian mentioned. I was like, "Oh yeah, that should have been this week." I couldn't tell you what happened in anything, but I hope the players and their families had fun. Sounds like they did.
Sure.
Good on them.
Did you guys even play
Um,
the game? Did you guys even play the Pro Bowl game in Madden? Because I never did. I skipped right over that.
Um,
Like if you
I
were on
want
Dynasty and you got to the end, I never played the Pro Bowl game. Well, hopefully, if everyone's playing Madden and you're playing not a Dynasty, what is it called, a franchise? Um, Hopefully, if you get there, your guys aren't playing anyway because you've taken your team to the Super Bowl.
I was
But
about to say I was
exactly.
always in the Super Bowl,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
never had an
I would
opportunity to
skip
play the
it
Pro Bowls.
regardless. I would skip it regardless, and that just shows even in a fantasy world, we're not that invested.
But let's come back to our topic on hand with
Sure.
the comeback player of the year, Joe Burrow, quarterback from the Cincinnati Bengals. kind of a weird name. It wasn't one that I really expected. I actually had thought Sam Darnold from the Vikings would have been the favorite to win that award. I
Should have
do
won it.
understand that Joe Burrow, had that weird ligament in his wrist injury last year. I think he missed the final 7 games, and then he comes back and he leads the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns. I get it. I'm not saying it's undeserved. I just didn't really think of him as being a candidate for it. Um, Either of you, I have any thoughts on that past that?
No,
I think
I
we've
thought
got
Sam Darnold should have got it.
I think it's great to lead the league and everything after you have an injury. I guess that's the definition of the award of a comeback player. I know the last year's comeback player came back from the dead, which is pretty cool. So he had a lot of Joe Burrow had to live up to that. But no, I mean you're right. I mean there's some guys that could have made their claim, but it's hard to argue when you lead the league and you came off an injury. So fair enough.
Defensive player of the year goes to Patrick Surtain, cornerback for Denver, shutdown corner, very well deserved. He's not somebody that puts up a lot of stats purely because he does not get targeted very often. He kind of is that Darrell Revis type corner where he's put on an island with the best receiver on the other team, and he just makes it to where they don't even get thrown at. Don't really have much to say. TJ Watt was, I think, second place in votes for that. Offensive player of the year, Saquon Barkley, running back for the Eagles. I think this was almost a consolation prize because, as we'll get to the MVP in just a moment, that was a 2-horse race. A lot of people thought Saquon should have been included in that. 2,000 yards, incredible postseason. Hopefully, we're talking about some more accolades of his in the very near future. Maybe Super Bowl MVP, Super Bowl champion. We'll see. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but Saquon winning Offensive Player of the Year. What do y'all think about it?
It's undeniable.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
I mean,
yeah. Have you seen anything like this in a number of years? I mean, who's the last guy that went over 2,000? It's had to have been a few years at least, and gone this far over 2,000. The last guy I can remember being this electric and exciting was Chris Johnson, I believe.
Yeah. Chris
Yeah.
Johnson was the name that I was going to bring up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
CJ2K. He had 2,500 total yards that year when you combine his rushing and receiving. But yeah, Saquon, I think if there was an award for like all season transaction of the year, I think he would win that one too because his move going from the Giants to the Eagles and all the success that it's led to, it just makes the Giants, massive egg on their face. It makes the Eagles front office look like geniuses because they went out and they broke the mold. They said we're willing to pay a running back if nobody else is, and look what it's done for their offense. So, my favorite one to talk about was Offensive Rookie of the Year. There was something real interesting that happened. We were one vote away from a unanimous Offensive Rookie of the Year. Of course, we're talking about Jaden Daniels, quarterback for the Commanders. No stranger to this podcast. We've talked about him and his accolades and the rookie year that he's had. Very well deserved, but only 49 out of the 50 votes. Chris, I'm not going to bring it to you because I'm sure you've already looked it up. You know exactly where this is going. So I'm going to ask Brian, who might have it in front of him too. Brian, do you know who the other vote went to?
probably Brock Bowers.
It was Brock Bowers got one vote for Offensive Rookie of the Year, which deserved that one vote as well. I would have liked to have seen Jaden get the unanimous. I think Bowers is going to have his time, but Daniels can't say enough about the job that he's done this year. I don't even think there was anybody else that should have been in contention, even despite what Brock Bowers did.
Well,
That's
I
just
mean, I
how good
think you.
Daniels was.
I don't know because you had several great rookies this year. I'm not going to take anything from Jaden Daniels. Great player. You know, I wish he was there this weekend, but he's not. That's okay. Um, you had Brock Bowers. You had Malik Neighbors. You know, would have been a good. You know, should have gotten some votes. Um, Bo Nix. I think he had a decent year. I think he started off kind of rocky, but I think he will do great under Sean Payton. I think he's going to do really well over the next few years.
Agreed.
Um, uh, Trying to think of I don't know if there's any more that I can think of off the top of my head, but yeah, we had some a good rookie class. I think that you could probably make an argument for a vote or two. But do I think the right person won it? Absolutely. I really do. I think, hands down, Jaden Daniels was the rookie of the year. And that I'm a huge Georgia fan, so I'm always gonna pull for Brock Bowers, but I also have to be real with it.
Well, and maybe Chris can back me up on this, but even with Jane Daniels being somebody that he's going to have to curse the name of for many years to come by the looks of it,
Sure.
when you look at Brock Bowers, he was very productive. The most productive rookie year we've seen from a receiver, let alone a tight end. Um, but what position are the Raiders in now? You look at what Malik Neighbors did for the Giants. Did it really help the Giants achieve any kind of success? Jaden Daniels, as we've talked about, really had the team on his back. I mean, he had games where he was leading them in rushing. Obviously, he was not shying away from throwing the ball. He was the game plan. He was very efficient. He moved that offense, very productive. I'm not going to say he single-handedly led them, but he was leading that team. They won because of him, not in spite of him. He was not hidden or protected in any kind of way. And I think that's what sets him apart from Neighbors and Bowers and some of those other guys that you mentioned.
But well, I could also make the argument Brock Bowers was, working with a third and sometimes fourth string quarterback. Had he have been working with a, you know, premier quarterback, does that change who wins? I mean, Jaden Daniels obviously has some talent around him. He's not throwing and catching the ball. You know, yes, he did lead some games with rushing. And again, I'm not here to bash him. I'm not here to take anything away from him. Uh, but yes, he went into the playoffs, but could Brock Bowers be there if their quarterback didn't get hurt? If they actually had a real coach, those kind of things. So it's hard to I guess speculate on things that shoulda, woulda, coulda happened.
Yeah, I mean, you can make that argument for every player. A running back can't block for himself. A receiver can't throw himself the ball. Quarterback can't throw himself the ball most of the time.
Sometimes,
We've seen it happen a few times now. But it's one of those things where a lot is placed on the quarterback, and Jaden Daniels did not crumble under that responsibility. Um, but I don't think we have to talk too much about that unless Chris, you had some thoughts on Jaden Daniels and
Uh,
offensive rookie of the year.
Not much. I just don't think you're going to win an award over a quarterback most of the time, especially from a tight end position. And while several rookies did have a great year, Jaden had a phenomenal year. So
mm-hmm.
you can't compare greatness to phenomenal. I mean, it's just not. Yeah, they got it right. I would have liked to see him go unanimous as well, but I mean, here's to the one Georgia fan or Raiders fan who, whatever it may have been, who decided otherwise. Good for you sticking up for your beliefs or whatever, but I think we all saw it the way it came out.
I think being able to have a conversation and bring so many names up that could be viewed as being deserving, kind of like Brian said, it is a testament to how much talent was in last year's class. I mean, we say Jaden Daniels is the best rookie quarterback of all time because of where he led Washington to. If you say Brock Bowers is the best tight end rookie season of all time, I mean, he broke the receptions record as a tight end with poor quarterback play. Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. I mean, if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football and you have any of Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, if you have any of those guys on your team, you're probably feeling pretty happy about it. Or maybe if you have all of them. I might have all of those guys.
Oh, okay.
But by might, I mean I do.
Just checking on that. Just fact checking.
And I would have the MVP as well on my team if Lamar Jackson had not gotten robbed. I'm throwing that out there right now, just getting ahead of it. Josh Allen, quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. Chris, go ahead and take your victory lap. I know it's coming.
Oh, thank you. Josh Allen, my man. As I mentioned on here before, I did work at Wyoming while Josh Allen was there, not starting, but let's not get into those small details. I love the underdog story of the Bills, if you can call it that. I think you can when go into 4 Super Bowls and losing. And here you are again, losing to a guy who just keeps owning him and Patrick Mahomes. But I love to see this warrior, this just Avenger, this gladiator, just get his a trophy on his shelf. I'm sure he'd rather have a Super Bowl trophy on his shelf, but very good, Josh Allen. I'm here with you, man, and let's hear the opposing side.
I'll see where Brian aligns before I make
good.
my case.
Well, so I'm looking at some of the names, the Lamar Jacksons and the Joe Burrows was brought up, Jared Goff was brought up, but the one that I think that should have got it is Barkley. And I get it. He won the Offensive Player of the Year, but he really should be the MVP of the year. Uh, and I think you're going to see that in the Super Bowl on Sunday. Um, I I think, and I know we got predictions coming up, but I hope he just runs all over Kansas City. I hope it's worse than what they did to Commanders. Um, I think he's the MVP of the league. The things that he did this year, I mean, he hurdled somebody backwards. I mean, come on now. Um, I, I that's just my guy. That's who I think should have had it. Give Josh Allen. I don't know, fourth on Offensive Player of the Year, maybe, because he can't win a Super Bowl. So, just saying.
It's not a team award.
Well, and I guess one argument that you could make is where would the Philadelphia Eagles be without Saquon Barkley? Well, 2 years ago, it was in a Super Bowl against the Chiefs. So is Saquon Barkley the most valuable player? You can say he had a great year. You could say he was the offensive player of the year. Is he the most valuable to his team's success? Potentially not. Maybe that's what kept him from that award. Josh Allen is the Bills' offense a lot of times. Lamar Jackson is the Ravens' offense, but maybe Derrick Henry in the year that he had is what hurt Lamar Jackson. That being said, I am a stats guy in a lot of these type of situations, and Lamar Jackson had better stats this year than he had last year when he won his second MVP, and I honestly believe he should have had his third. You compare them head to head, Josh Allen, is certainly mobile enough. I mean, he's known to be able to run the football and stuff like that, but I think a lot of people would say he's a better thrower of the ball than Lamar Jackson. Obviously, I don't have a way of putting this graphic up, but just to run through some of these numbers, and I won't throw the actual numbers, but I will say Lamar Jackson had a higher completion percentage. He had more passing yards per attempt, more passing yards per game. He led Josh Allen 41 passing touchdowns to 28. He only had 4 interceptions compared to Josh Allen's 6. He had a higher rating. He had more rushing yards per attempt. He did have fewer rushing touchdowns, which I think you can attribute to Derrick Henry being there, but more total touchdowns. And he did that with the 5th hardest schedule in the NFL compared to the 7th easiest schedule for the Bills. Like I said, it was a close race. Josh Allen finished with 383 points, where Lamar had 362. But it's hard to look at those numbers and say that Lamar doesn't make the strong case to be MVP for a third time. And I guess if I was just going to make one final kind of point, just to put a bow on all of this, last week we talked about my LaShawn McCoy jersey being a purpose. Obviously, this is the GOAT, Tom Brady. I think I said in Brady I trust on last week's podcast when we were talking about the coaching hires and the Pete Carroll move and all that stuff. Tom Brady voted for Lamar Jackson. In Brady I trust. I rest my case.
All right, moving on. Let's talk about golf. So couple of big things going on in golf right now. Um, Obviously, the PGA and the Live Tour. We talked about it last week. I believe they have asked our president to kind of step in and kind of hash this out. Let's see if we can make a deal and everybody get along. Um, so I know the commissioner, Jay Mahan, I think is how you say his name, and
Monahan, maybe.
maybe, and Adam Scott were both at the White House meeting with Trump. So I believe Tiger Woods, I think Jay, Adam, and Tiger all came out with a statement. I'm not exactly sure what that was. I haven't gone in and read it, but hopefully it's good news. They can come to some kind of agreement, and you know maybe the live golfers, which they do have some exceptional golfers on that side. Maybe they can come over and play in a lot of the PGA tournament, and vice versa. The PGA guys go over and play in some of the live stuff. So because I do think both sides are good for golf. They just need to figure out how to coexist and not be at each other, because anytime you're at war, that's a bad thing for both sides. So I'd like to, as a fan and as a golfer, I'd like to see them come together and maybe work something out. The other big thing is my favorite tournament of the year is going on this weekend, which is the um, waste management. Obviously, a lot of people know it for the stadium hole, um, the rowdy crowds. Again, it's got the redneck in it, so it's a lot of fun, and that's something you really don't see a lot is, redneck and golf together. So that's been a lot of fun. I think one of the notable stories that I've seen is Justin Thomas had a really good first day and then kind of fell off a little bit today. So again, Saturday and Sundays where it's at. I'd love to go out to Arizona and see it one time in person, be on the stadium hole, be in that rowdy crowd. But we'll see where the future takes us. But um, that's kind of it. I don't want to get into the leaderboard and all that kind of stuff with the waste management, because again, it's going to change every single day till we get to Sunday. So, but again, go check it out. If you're not a fan, go watch it, and uh, maybe we'll turn you into a fan,
Well,
or may or maybe
we
you'll
talked
just be
about
a wrestling fan.
you already missed the Royal Rumble, but you're not too late for WrestleMania.
No.
I mean, I think it's cool to see. We talked about Rick Shields being brought in to help with Live and stuff like that. I think it's really cool that the two sides are working to try to unify the world of men's professional golf, to put on the best events and showcase the best talent. It's kind of one of those where if you took the NFL and divided it in half and treated it as two separate entities, where you won the AFC and you won the NFC, and there was no cross competition between them, you could say, oh, well, this is better, or this is better. And you don't really know who's better overall until you get to that Super Bowl and you say, here's our best versus our best. I
Sure.
think golf wins when you see the best from both companies get to go head to head and participate, and have those co-branded events. You can still do things separately, of course, but certain things, certain championships, I just feel like you give a lot more credibility when you say, oh, well, this guy won it, but would he have won it if these three guys were also in the tournament? And so
Yep.
you erase that doubt. I think it's just better sports model in general.
And that's kind of where everybody's opinion is going. I did see one other story, and I probably should have looked it up a little bit better. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the uh, getting rid of the delays in golf and what makes it so boring. And I think they're actually looking at getting rid of the whole aim point, and what that is when you see the golfers using their putter and they've got it up in front of their face, and you know, I never do it. I'm not a pro golfer by any means, but I don't know how it helps you either. And that's kind of what they're saying is it takes up a lot of time, that a lot of unnecessary time. So I think they're actually trying to get that. I don't know if they're just trying to get rid of it or get it banned altogether in golf, both PGA and LPGA, because it eats up a ton of time, slows up pace, because it does have an effect on the amateur golfer as well, because some of these guys, they go out and they play on these public courses such as myself, but I'm a get to it, hit it, and go on to the next shot kind of guy, where some of these guys you see take 30 or 40 practice swings, and they're trying to line it up like the pros, and it just, it is not good. It makes for a terrible experience. I played with my son last weekend, had a great time with him. Um, but we played the front nine in like an hour and a half and played the back nine in like 4 hours. And it's just like, ugh, it's draining. I don't, I love golf, but I don't want to be out there that long. So, um, if you go play golf, speed up and go to the driving range. If it's your first time ever hitting a golf ball, go to the driving range first. Just saying. Um,
Well, you
but
guys are both way, way older than I am. You guys have seen more presidents
I
than
don't
I
know
have.
about way, way, way
Oh,
older. Wait a
wait
minute
a minute.
now.
I'm just
Especially me.
saying.
Come on. You ain't no spring chicken.
I'm the springiest chicken on this podcast. I'm riding that one out.
Well, that's
I don't
Um,
know if
debatable.
you can put me in the
but
way
have
older
either of
category.
you elder gentlemen seen a president get involved in sports the way that we saw Donald Trump get involved in this week by stepping in to kind of be the liaison between Live and the PGA Tour? Is that something that we've seen from other presidents? I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yes. Uh, well, it's kind of a direct question, and you're asking the wrong person, especially if it's talking about college sports. Because I'm going to give you a real direct answer. Yes, we have seen a president get involved. A president, oh man, if I could get you the exact name, a president once named the college football national champion based on a game he attended. It was Arkansas versus Texas. I think it was in the mid to late 60s. Texas won. The president said this was a great game. I declare Texas the national champion. And we're like, hold on. There's like 2 games left for both teams. And he's like, I declare, I think it was Richard Nixon, maybe. Um, and
Nixon's would have
I
been
think
70.
I think at the well, yeah. So I'm not exactly sure. I want to say it was 68. So I'm not exactly sure who it was. I can fact check that later. But no, they went on to not lose another game, and they do claim that national championship, which I think was tied with another team or two, as championships in college football were often done prior to the BCS at least. And yeah, they go ahead and they break that tie based on the president saying something. So yes, but carry on with your point because I don't think you expected me to have an answer to that.
It was a legitimate question. I mean, not only is Trump an avid golfer. He's done some YouTube golf stuff. He has a course that Live plays on and do events. He's done stuff with the Pro Am Tour and stuff like that. So obviously he's plugged into the golf world. I believe I heard that he is the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl as of this weekend. So I mean, I think that's notable. And then just to kind of breach into a slightly different topic, something that I thought was notable in the world of sports, taking it out of the state's hands, Trump signed an executive order that he called Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports, where transgender women will not be allowed to compete against naturally born women. He is replacing the word gender with the word sex, basically saying that what you were born as is what you will be classified as an athlete. I think all politics aside, I think we can all agree, and I think most people should agree. There's obviously going to be those few that will argue for the sake of arguing, take that elsewhere. But I don't. I mean, as a father to a 2-year-old daughter, y'all saw last week, I want her to be able to play sports. I want her to view that as being healthy competition. And I don't want her to feel like she shouldn't even try because she's allowed to compete against people that have an unfair advantage against her. I mean, obviously, she's already coming from my depleted gene pool. I mean, that's hard enough to be something athletic. Like I said, I'm no NFL player myself, but we all played sports. We were all having those competitive stages that we were brought up through, and I don't know the feeling, and I would never want to know the feeling of being a female that looks across at whatever her competitor is and to feel defeated because you can see somebody that you know to be a male competing against you and taking away any chance that you have of earning victory and basically all your hard work and sacrifice that got to that being taken away. I think this is a huge win in the world of sports, all politics aside.
I
Well,
don't.
the only thing that I can say, I agree. I don't even know why this has even got to the level of White House. I think, come on now, uh, a male swimmer should not be going up against a female swimmer in a female sanctioned sport. No different than a male golfer, as a Tiger Woods, a Roy McIlroy should go play on the LPGA. You know, this shouldn't even be a topic in my view. Of course, I'm old Southern boy. It's just our belief system's a little different down here. But I do commend like some of the females, especially in the high school wrestling, that step up and they compete. Because it's not based on are you male or are you female. It's based on your weight. If you're 134 pounds, you're gonna wrestle somebody 134 pounds. You know, it doesn't play into that factor. So I'm torn both sides. If a male, if he's again the average size of the female competitors, does he have an advantage? Does he? Okay, yeah, he's a male, but that doesn't. If a 134-pound male, does that give him any kind of advantage? Um, obviously, I guess he could have uh, longer arms or he's taller in stature. But then look at Brittany Griner for the Hawks now, or for I'm sorry for the
Dream.
yeah. So it's you know I put her up against some of the NBA players because I think she could compete against them. So
I disagree.
It
I
is
think there's a huge difference between a 6'10 woman and a 6'10 man. Is Brittany Griner going to beat me on a court? Absolutely. I'm not
sure.
saying that she can't beat men at basketball,
Right.
but when you put them on the same playing field of she's a professional basketball player and Anthony Davis is a professional basketball player and they play sort of the same position, if you put them one on one, what's going to happen?
Right.
She's not going to score a single point unless he just feels sorry for her. There is a difference between men and women when
Mhm.
it comes to the way that their bodies develop, their strengths, the composition of their body types, and stuff like that. That even when you look at the identical weight, looking within a weight class, there's just too much difference for that to ever be considered a fair competition. And so, yeah, it's a huge achievement when a female can go out and wrestle against men and win state championships and stuff like that. But it's notable because they're at a disadvantage, even being within a weight class. That means that they're winning with skill. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's not enough women participating in that sport to have their own championship, which is what a lot of women's sports were set up to do. There's a reason you don't see a lot of women playing in college football. There's a reason why there's none of them playing in the NFL. It's not because they're not allowed to, it's because it's not fair to them to expect them to.
But okay, but that's I mean, this is kind of my point. Does it go both ways? If you specify, you know, males, a male sex cannot compete with a female sex. Does it flip? Does that high school wrestler, female wrestler, now not have a place to go because she's the wrong sex?
No.
Well, I think a lot of it, and Chris, I'll let you hit on this point, but I think on sports where it is separated, boys versus girls, excuse me, I think you're going to see a hard line drawn. There is a boys basketball team and a girls basketball team, and if your best player happens to be on the girls team, I don't
Mhm.
think that you see her go to the boys basketball team because she has a set team that she can and has to play for. With wrestling, a lot of times you don't have a separate female division within a county or a state or anything like that. That if they want to compete for state championships, they have to go against males.
But that's what
But
I'm
with
saying.
mo teams
That's what
being
I'm
separated,
that's what I'm saying is when you put politics in this, and one of the things that we kind of agreed on when we started this channel was we were not going to get overly political. But when you interject this into politics, you're going to have to be really, really careful about how that is written because you could make it where that female can no longer compete, even though there's no platform. Sorry about your luck. There's no platform. You know, it all depends on how it gets written up. I do like that the president is involved. He is, trying to make things a little better for this country, and for sports in general. But like I said, it's a touchy situation, and I just feel like you have to be super, super careful because it could end up hurting somebody that it was not intended to hurt. That's my only point.
Well, staying on wrestling, first off, you don't really see this past the age of like 12 or 13. There's a reason for that because that's when guys start developing a little better. So I knew a state champion wrestler at like 134. I knew several girls that were about 134. He could whip any of them. To you guys' point, I'm not sure that you guys are well informed here. There is NCAA women's wrestling. A school I used to work at now has women's NCAA wrestling, and they're not the first ones. There's 40 or 50 of them. So they have their platforms that they can go. The issue as a whole, I don't think it's really that much of an argument. I think 95% of people agree with us. Even within the trans community, I don't think they're dying on this hill. I think they want other things from the interactions I've had and the posts and things I've read that they don't want to be able to compete with men. They don't want to be able to compete with women. It's not really the hill they're dying on. Um, I think what we all really just want is an even playing field, and in a world where we have steroids and bad recruiting practices and things like that. This is one thing that's kind of like a no brainer that you can kind of control. And I don't think there's that many people against it. I don't know if it's the biggest debate in the world. I
No,
don't think
it's
there's
a
a
it's
lot of
a.
people on the other side.
I agree. I think it's a hot topic on news outlets. It's good talking points.
Mhm.
But I agree. I don't think I just like I said, I don't want to discourage a female if she does go to a high school that you know they don't have a female wrestling. It may be bigger in college, and yes, I am surely uneducated about that world, but I don't. I have a niece who is wrestling for her high school, and I don't ever want her to be discouraged or be told, "Hey, you can't do this," because she absolutely can. But all she has is guys. She has to wrestle with the guys because it's not a big thing around here. But I agree with you. It's not a hill worth dying on, and that's why politics just is not a subject that I care to be in.
For sure. And like I said, the only reason why I think it was worth, bringing up is, I said Title IX is all about equal opportunity for athletes. And with us being a sports podcast, I thought it was a notable story, however
Sure.
you fall on the platform. But like I said, anything that gives every player an equal opportunity to compete and compete fairly and have the opportunity to prove why you deserve to be in that sport and to participate and stuff like that, I'm all for it. I think it's a great thing. Um, but yeah, that was really all I had on it. Any other thoughts for you?
Uh, just to back up my own statements from earlier, that Texas a president getting involved in college athletics, that game was attended by Richard Nixon. It was 1969, Arkansas versus Texas. He did declare them the national champion after he watched that game. That it even says here was premature, but Texas went on to beat Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. So any debate was kind of erased from that. Look out for my college football channel coming up. I won't say too much more about that. I'll let you guys know when I get rolling on that more. So I'll promote that at that time.
Is it too late for Donald Trump to watch the NFC Championship game and declare the Eagles the Super Bowl champions? I'm just asking.
It is. There's a lot more opinion in college football 50 years ago than a clear-cut playoff game in today's pro sports.
Worth a shot.
Oh well.
Well, I mean, that's all I really had this week.
Yep.
I enjoyed talking with you guys. Thanks for doing this again with me for another week, and thanks to everybody who's watching it. Give you a little bit of thoughts going into it. Earlier today, even we dropped the first snippet from episode 3. That was just a trimmed version, our football only discussion. We want to try rolling out some shorter videos for you guys. I know not everybody has a chance or the luxury to watch an hour and a half long video all at once. And maybe you're like Brian and you don't necessarily care about the wrestling, and to hear me and Chris talk about it, maybe that's not your thing. And so we want to make it easy for you guys to not only find, but watch and enjoy the content that you actually care about. So we do want to break things up and kind of send out videos in a couple of different ways. Obviously, we want to keep the podcast going the way that it is, but to also make it easier for you guys to watch what you care about. That's going to mean a lot for you and a lot more for us as well. So any other opportunities that we have to better serve you guys as the growing community that we're building here, please let us know. We're not too proud to take suggestions or anything like that. So that would be my one thing that I would ask for you guys. Obviously, we get into our spiel about liking the videos, commenting, subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. We're not going to shy away from saying those things, but please let us know anything that we can do to better tailor our content for what you're after. That was really my only thoughts.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up and we will see y'all next week.
Take care.